Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a conversation about how Korean productions can move beyond meetings to close deals in the Southeast Asian market. Today, I'm very happy to introduce our special guest to you, Charles Kim, who is the Director of Business Development and Partnerships at the Studio97, based here in Singapore. Charles brings over 15 years of experience across the media value chain, from producing to acquiring content to driving co-productions, branded partnerships, and regional sales all across Asia. Charles is also a media advisor here at One Tree Hill Ventures. Now, he has held many roles at companies like Media Corp, Asia Food Channel, Coconuts Media, and Warner Brothers, where he worked on scripted and unscripted originals, as well as brand-funded content and sponsorship across Southeast Asia and beyond. Charles has seen both sides of the coin, both as a buyer and as a partner in helping creators to shape ideas that actually travel. Today, he'll share some really practical insights on what Southeast Asia buyers are really looking for, but more importantly, how Korean IP can be positioned for this region and how to turn meetings into real deals. Please join me in welcoming Charles. Now, Charles, thanks for joining us today. You've worn many hats in the media industry as a producer, in acquisitions, as an executive, in co-production and partnerships, and now you're running business development.
Mm.
For our audience, how would you summarize what you're doing today in the ecosystem?
What I'm doing today now. So right now I'm doing similar things that I've been doing, always doing, trying to create a bridge between the two worlds, especially with the contents and IPs in Korea. I'm more focused on IPs now because that's a lot easier to deal with rather than the production itself, which is has gotten very expensive over the years, and the funding has not been, it became more complicated over the years. So I'm working with entertainment companies in Korea, trying to find the commercial opportunities outside of Korea, and especially in Southeast Asia and beyond.
Mm. Well, you've been in Singapore for some time now. So when you look at the current Southeast Asian landscape from your vantage point here in Singapore, what excites you the most and what concerns you as a media executive?
What excites me the most is still the opportunity. I think there are still many opportunities abound, as well as I think the current media landscape is somewhat still stuck in old ways, and there are still room for changes and doing a lot of catch up in a digital age. There's an opportunity there that you can explore as well. What concerns me is basically it's the same thing. So it's a you know it's a two sides of the same blade, you know what I mean? So it's the classical models is severely fractured. The same, for the classical business model for a lot of medias, the people are not going to movie theaters anymore, and there's OTTs and whatnot. The same kind of advertising revenue that they used to have is no longer there, or it's spread.
Mm,
So trying to capture that is a lot more challenging now.
right. Um, that leads me to my second question, and that is, from your experience, how are audiences, and of course, as a result of that, media buyers, different across Southeast Asia? Because one of the things that we always look at is, obviously Southeast Asia, we cannot look at it as one single region.
Right.
With 10, 11 different markets here, all of them are complex in their own way. How do you view that, and how it differs across markets like Thailand and Indonesia that are, or
Well,
Malaysia, which are so different?
yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing in my opinion that
Mm,
when I deal with the IP owners or the content makers out of Korea, that they don't quite seem to understand that Southeast Asia is very segmented market. It's not a one lump sum market. So they do not so the each market has its own characteristics and what they like and what they don't like. So you have to treat it as very different, and it requires also a high level of localization as well. While the
mm,
Korean content itself that tend to be in traveling well, there is also a degree of localization that needs to be done in order to be successful in each markets. And I think they're slowly catching up with that, and getting more into the localizing and working with each different markets.
mm. So a little follow-on question to that. Which is the market that you think is the most complex to navigate from your experience?
Uh Which smart? I mean, they're all different. They're all, but then I think there. I would say that the easy market are probably, I would say, some of the bigger market for like a Korean contents would be like a Singapore, maybe Thailand, Vietnam. But they all have its own difficulties. Indonesia is a popular there, but it's kind of hard to crack in terms of like finding a commercial model.
Mm,
Um, uh, so yeah, it's different.
mm,
Yeah, so you got to treat it as different. But there are certain markets that are it's more stronger than others. So you
mm.
have to kind of like go in that priority, in my opinion.
So I'd love to tap on your experience, kind of like being in the middle, connecting both sides. In your experience working with acquisitions and co-productions, what are some of the top things that these buyers in Southeast Asia would be looking for as they evaluate a new IP from overseas or a new project?
Well, I can't speak too much about the acquisitions because I've not done acquisitions since the Asian Food Channel, which was a long time ago. But I would reckon that the acquisition will depend largely on the popularity of content and the
Mm,
relevance to their culture and the audience, obviously, for each market. But at the same time, it's going to be the pricing, right?
mm.
They're very much cost sensitive. As far as production goes, I mean, we're talking about co-production.
Yeah, in co-productions as well.
Yeah, co-production. I've worked on co-production model for quite some time, since the Warner Brother Discovery days, and really it's very tough not to crack because there's no real model that really works. On the one hand, yes, the Korean contents are popular, but why if we were sitting in if you're a broadcaster or production house sitting in, let's say, Indonesia, why would you invest into that when you can just buy
Mm,
the finished content? Adding in like and they also in the past they tried and failed by adding in some actors of theirs in there, so we have a bit of a joint co-production with Korean actors with Indonesian or Thai actors or whatever, but that also doesn't work because there's imbalance of star power there,
mm,
where
mm,
some headlining Korean actors are quite popular regionally, internationally, but the local actors may not be. And then
mm,
of course, how do you divide the rights? Are the Korean companies willing to give up like the rights? In fact, a lot of the production houses in Korea, they don't even have the rights.
mm,
Usually the channels and the platforms have all the rights. So it's kind of a difficult situation. I've seen at least recently that there are some interesting development where
mm,
the script adaptation is, I mean, View announced like last year they were adopting number of Korean scripts. So that's one way, which is the traditional format sale, format buying. Vietnam, they did a movie with Lee Kwang-soo from Running Man in
mm,
Vietnam. Him as this Korean star, and then getting lost in Vietnam with almost entirely like a Vietnam cast and Vietnam setting.
mm,
That works, but then also because the cost of production in Vietnam is considerably lower than Korea. But then you also have to wonder like who's that movie for? And I don't know because of Lee Kwang-soo's notoriety and the fact that majority of his film is shot in Vietnam and with a Vietnam cast, it will be targeted for Vietnamese audience for sure. But whether or not the Korean audience will respond to that is a question mark. All right.
mm.
So they will have to probably look to recoup most of their money and then some in the Vietnam market, and then whatever they're gonna get from the Korean market will be a bonus.
Right.
Yeah,
So
so they have to
that's a
approach it
great
that way.
right. So that's a great segue into my next question, and that's about IP.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's no secret that Korean IP travels very well around the world. In your view, what are the aspects of Korean storytelling or production style that resonate so much with audiences here in Southeast Asia? Because we see that it's been tremendously successful. The big hits are, obviously doing really well. So what aspects or what aspects of production styles resonate the most? And from your point of view as well, where do they tend to miss the mark?
Well, that's a big question mark and a mystery to me as well. I've read many different opinions on it by Koreans, Korean authors,
Mm,
as well as foreign critics, who had their opinion. And I mean, there are it's a very complex question. It's not just one thing that's why you can. It's not something you can put a finger on. It's like this is it. This is the secret sauce that makes the Korean content IP so popular and be
Mm,
able to travel, whereas others are having a harder time. I think it's a variety of issues, variety of factors that are contributing to that, and one of which I would say is partly is a cultural.
mm,
I think the one of the reason is that a lot of our audience worldwide, I think they're kind of sick and tired of formulaic the Hollywood shows. They wanted something alternate, different, and different, and
mm,
at the same time offer similar quality of production. And Koreans, I mean, in terms of a production quality, Korea definitely has it. In terms
mm,
of acting quality, Korea definitely has that. But in terms of a story and the secret sauce, I think a lot of it is, I think, also cultural the
mm,
way they would tell a same story I mean, a different story, tell a story on a different topic, a same topic, it would be quite different. And I think
mm,
they find that quite refreshing. I mean, I've seen the YouTubers online reacting to Korean shows.
mm,
Some of them like, laughing out loud. I mean, an action movie or bawling their eyes out, right? Which they don't really do watching American series or shows.
mm,
So they're getting it. They're getting hit on the emotional aspect of it they never experienced in other, Hollywood shows.
mm,
And then the fact that I think Korea doesn't really have a. They started doing more of that, more that moving into like a genre stuff since the OTT days. Even their genre is very much mixed. You have some, even if it's just action, there's a great deal of the Korean ethos or path, whatever it is that makes it kind of stand out and different. Whether it's the revenge or whatever. There's a very grounded emotional core that doesn't quite exist in Hollywood, for example,
mm,
which makes it a unique product. And it also has Netflix to thank for because because of that it had a platform to distribute itself to the as many eyeballs with the subtitles and whatnot. And American audience who used to hate going to movies and reading subtitles, especially the younger generation, they are open to
mm,
it. And so I think a lot of it kind of came together. So and it became a perfect storm.
mm. So a lot of it comes down to circumstance as well, right?
Yeah, I
Everything
mean,
kind of falling
yeah,
into play.
it's
Yeah.
not just all about what Korea did special.
Mm,
Of course, yeah. I mean, I applaud many things that Koreans did, and there are a number of things that Koreans are doing different that makes it unique. But also, I think that timing was just so perfect, and then some luck was involved as well. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I think so as well. Especially in this space, as we've been working with a lot of content companies as well. That is the number one question that everyone wants to crack, and that is what is the secret recipe? And through all the experts and people that we've spoken to, there is no secret recipe. It really is all about just figuring out what works for you, what works for the kind of audience that you're trying to deliver to.
Right.
And like you said, right, it requires a lot of things to fall into place, and
Well,
honestly, a little bit of luck.
I would add to that though. I think one
Yeah.
of the reasons why the Korean contents are doing so well, and I think it will continue to do well for some time now, is that
Mm,
I don't see any real competition in the market at the
mm,
moment. I think a lot of it is because a lot of Asian countries are very conservative, and also there are a lot of
mm,
countries that have a lot of heavy restrictions and censorship.
mm,
Whereas I think a lot of Korean entertainment right now, they are quite free to
mm.
tackle a lot of the subject that were even considered taboo, whether it's political, whether it's religion,
Right.
whatever it is, right? And
Mm,
then able to provide a very real human story behind
mm,
that everybody can relate to. I think that in that sense that I think I would say that the Korean content have a strength and IPs have a strength and the uniqueness also.
mm. So thanks for sharing about that.
Yeah.
You've obviously worked with brands and agencies as well through content studios and branded content. How does the buyer's mindset of a brand differ from that of, let's say, a broadcaster or a streamer these days when it comes to content?
Well, I mean, brands don't really care about, how good content is or whatever. They're not the judge of
Mm,
that. They're looking at the numbers.
true.
I mean, oh, of course, the brand value. I mean, they have a brand value. Does it sit well with its brand? Is it a good fit? Of course, they will see that. And then, of course, the most important thing is the numbers, whether, um, uh, partnering with this particular content or IP, is that gonna, create a boost for their product or their services or their brand overall? That would be the paramount concern for them, essentially.
Mm. And so when you look at these international production or IP holders pitched to Southeast Asia, are there any kinds of assumptions that you think that they should avoid making, or any kind of pitfalls that they should avoid? Because it seems like there's obviously a lot to take note of. What's your take on that?
Can you repeat the question one more time?
So when you look at the productions or the IP holders that are coming from, let's say, Korea to Singapore or to Southeast Asia, are there any common pitfalls or things or common assumptions that you see them making that you think it's important for them to take note of to not make, that you see
Yeah,
think
I think the biggest one would be the just because it's popular
Mm,
with it's a Korean audience or the US audience or whatever, that it will be popular there too. I think that you really need to understand, the audience in Southeast Asia and different countries and
mm,
what makes them tick and all that. In order to sell, what's selling there, what are the things that those market audience think about or want or worry about, those kind of things. So it's
yeah.
I mean, this is not just for content, it's for anything, like in the corporate world too. I mean,
Mm,
a lot of companies come to another market and fail without having done the market study, and they come in without doing much of a localization, and they fail, and they will
mm,
scratch their head and wonder why, right? You can't just copy and paste, you have to do some homework.
mm. I'm curious to tap into your experience over the last 10, 15 years. You mentioned earlier that the matrix is obviously something that's very important, for IP holders to look at brands. And taking that same logic into international buyers for films, had the matrix kind of evolved over time, from your point of view, especially with these
What,
OTT platforms coming in? How has that changed?
when you say matrix, what do you mean by that?
The financial matrix, yeah, the commercial value of such projects.
I mean, it's not exact science.
Mm,
From a buyer's point of view, what sells, what works. I mean, obviously, the first thing they will look at is like, who's in it, and the star power, which leads to any sort of element in the show or production, whether it's the star director or what have you. I mean, that's the first thing they'll look at. Anything that could translate as a potential ROI, you know that would be the first thing they will look at. And then
mm,
whether or not the story is intriguing enough, was it new enough, I guess those kind of things. But that usually, not like like back in whatever. Nowadays, that those are the most paramount thing, and which I think one of the reason why that a lot of even those big studios, they less and less so they start taking chances on brand new IPs. They
mm,
want to take chance on the existing ones by, how do I make more money of this? How do I rehash this? How do I reboot it? How do I remake, that sort of thing.
right. And so in your current capacity at the Studio 97, you obviously are connecting content, talent, and sponsors across these markets. How should then Korean producers think about building these projects that are kind of like ready to go from day one or from the start?
Wow, that's $1 million question. I mean, I don't have the answer for that. I mean, the only thing, if I was in their shoes, and knowing what I know in this market, what I would ask them to focus on would be to creating their own IPs they can own, rather than continue
Mm,
producing. It's a tough to just keep doing that. Although without ownership of an IP that could potentially be able to generate revenues and become commercialized into something as a brand tie-up or as a product or service or what have you. I think
mm.
you're fighting an uphill battle.
Right. Thanks for sharing about that. Now, you have run co-production partnerships for
Mhm.
Asian originals at global media companies. For a Korean producer, what are the more realistic co-production models that you see make sense today? Because I'm always curious to think about what are the more tangible, what are the more feasible things, the small steps that these production companies can take.
I mean, essentially, when you talk about co-production, let's talk about the co-production, the meaning of the word for a second. I
Mm,
think, and the expectation, perhaps.
mm,
I think what when Korean producers come to me or come to this market and look for a co-production, what they're looking for is really money. They're looking for
mm,
funding. They're not really looking for to hand over the directorial thing to them to
mm,
somebody else, or the split the production down the middle. They just
yeah,
can't do that because they won't be able to create kind of type of product that will appeal to their first audience.
yeah,
So in that sense, I would say I think you have to be very realistic about what your expectations are. And if
mm,
you're looking to come in with some kind of funding, I think you need to have certain elements that would, I mean, do you have to understand where the funding can be come from? One
mm,
is obviously from the brand partnership, brand exposure. And but that also have a myriad of like hurdles, including where the show is going to be aired,
mm,
and if it's going to air in Korean terrestrial, it's more flexible. But then I mean, within Korea, there's also agencies, and they also have subject to the certain kind of a advertising partnerships and whatnot. It cannot conflict with that in any way. So you have to check that first. So before you decide to engage the foreign brands,
mm,
and then on the other hand, if you work with the OTTs, especially like a Netflix, from my
mm,
understanding that they're very strict and they actually forbid any kind of PPL, product placement. So in that case, then that it's basically a no-go. The other thing they can look at is obviously the government funding. If the
mm,
some portion of the shows can be or would be shot but then in the particular country, let's say Singapore, for example,
mm,
right? So that Singapore as a travel location or whatever that can be exposed and has some commercial value, and then
yeah,
you can talk to, let's say, tourism board or even IMDA, I suppose.
mm,
But then they have their own like a set of rules and
mm,
what they would deem it as a qualified or not. They won't just do it
mm,
just because it has 15 minutes of exposure of a Singapore. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
and then from last time I checked the fine prints
mm,
for example, IMDA co-production. I think they um they they would support up to like a 25% of the money spent in Singapore into production.
mm,
So it's not just like a lump sum money that's gonna be given. It's more
yeah,
like a rebate. So they have to
right,
understand that. And then with the tourism board, again, they have their own scheme. They can sponsor up to anywhere between 25 to
yeah,
50%, I think. But then, you know, it depends on the work. Who's in it, you know,
mm,
where is the show is going to be airing? If it's going to be airing in Korea, that's it. Then they probably not going to be interested. If it
right,
goes on like a Netflix or something, or Disney or Amazon that has a
mm,
regional distribution, then yeah, I think they'll be interested, right?
mm,
So those are some of the things that they have to pre-work on
yeah,
before coming in,
mm,
because otherwise they want to like try to sell it on the strength of their work. I mean, what they think is interesting, how watchable their show is. They're gonna just waste their time and
mm.
go home empty-handed.
So it sounds like, I mean, there's a lot of hurdles to navigate and a lot of things, a lot of considerations to think about. So from your point of view, what would a good co-production model look like? Because it seems like there's a lot of things that they need to take note of.
Well, I think the first thing that you have to decide is that
Mm,
you have to decide who's this audience, who is it for?
yeah.
Who's the audience? Who's the first audience? I think that's the main thing they have to decide first.
Mm,
Um, um, because there's no way that let's say they're doing a co-production between Singapore and Korea, right? There's no
mm,
way that you're gonna satisfy both audience at the same time
yeah.
just by simply inserting the actors and actresses from each country. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Um, so it would have to be the who's in it, who's doing it, who's people behind it has name value. It's all about whether the project has a value, and how do you
Mm,
assess the value? Is the star power, the director power, the distribution power, essentially, and
mm,
then they will look at like what's the story, you know, yeah.
right. Obviously, we cannot finish this session without talking about what's happening in the industry right now. AI, short form videos,
Right.
Gaming is obviously becoming really, really popular. It's converging very strongly with TV and film today. From your perspective in working with such talent in games, what does this convergence and new trends mean for Korean IP that's coming and expanding out of Korea into regions like Southeast Asia?
What can you also define that meaning for me, the convergence? I mean, you're saying are you saying that these forms are combining together or
Yeah, yeah, like how short form video is taking over a lot of the traditional.
Okay. I don't
Yeah.
see a conversion in a sense that they're actually kind of like, becoming one. I think
Mm,
they are their own genre in the platform. I mean, I also read some, I got really interested in the short form too, which is very popular in China right now, and getting quite a bit of views and also the revenues as well.
mm,
And I watched a lot of the experts say about the future of the short form videos and whatnot. And what they're saying is what can agree with is the short form is a very different animal than the regular form shows. So if you were to compare it to say food.
mm,
The regular form dramas or movies would be like dining at an expensive restaurant. You get a full experience, whatever. Short form would be like those street food that
mm,
that snack that you will take.
yeah.
That's the very cheap, very fast, and it's on the go.
Mm,
So they're not going to compete with each other. It's going to be a very different thing. Um, Whether will it converge in a way that there could be like a long form of whatever, and then there's also like a compendium short form. Maybe that's
mm,
possible.
mm,
As a different platform. Um, but I think they will just coexist as a two different separate segment of things. And the gaming, of course, is in my view, I think gaming is just a content that's interactive.
mm,
In that sense, I think it will do very well. In fact, from what I know, and the reason why I'm more bullish on the gaming is that it's a media that's continually growing, whereas the classical traditional media like film and TV are slowly dying.
mm,
And then there's also a huge opportunity to expand. So a lot of the more games, of course, there are AAA games that are like high budget, big budget films type of games, but there are a lot of casual games that are taking over the market and doing very well. And then I think in the coming of a digital age and digital economy, I think the
yeah.
gaming will do very well also because it's the one content that actually can be delivered completely digitally, and the audience are able to engage with it. In a way that I think they're already sort of doing that through like in exchanging like or buying and selling the items on the game and things like that. So yeah.
Mm. All right. That leads me to my last question, and that is obviously with ATF coming up, a lot of these companies will be looking to get deals done and to get business done. And when it comes to the negotiation table here in Southeast Asia, compared to what you've seen in Korea and also in other parts of the world, what do you think is an important piece of advice that you would leave for these companies as they are going into?
My advice would be to come with a realistic expectation, number one. And number two, please do some homework about, what kind of opportunities are potentially available. And then number
Mm,
three, you have to position your pitch or your selling, that would that would have a maximum, um, chance of getting that. And
mm,
I've seen so many that come without any of that, and they'll just come and pitch, and there's no they had no idea.
yeah.
So they often a lot of the meetings will just go with a hello hi, and then at
Mm,
most they will sign an MOU, but what does that mean? Not much. Yeah.
mm. Just a little follow-up question to that before we end off, and that is, how would you recommend that they find that recipe that works?
The recipe that works. I mean, again, I think they have to be the really realistic about. I mean, they have to be commercially savvy. I mean,
Sure.
that's the thing about that's the irony is that a lot of the production people are creative people, and creative people are not necessarily like commercially savvy. So
Mm,
combining those two is a very difficult thing. But they really have to understand that how the if you're gonna ask somebody for funding, you have to understand that how that person gonna get their money back.
Yeah.
So I would employ them to figure out a model rather than come and thinking that they will sort of figure it out for themselves. Looking at how amazing their content is, try to figure that out first, and then pitch it to the person and how they're gonna make money. Otherwise, the chance of you getting that funding is extremely low. Yeah,
Mm. Well, thanks a lot for your time today, Charles. It's a pleasure to obviously always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for sharing your insights with our
likewise.
audience. And
Thanks for inviting me.
yeah, thank you for